A new citizens campaign calls on city and provincial leaders to stop playing games and recommit to light rail transit (LRT) on the east-west B line. After more than 3 years of active planning and design, suddenly the future of LRT is in doubt. Acting outside a council mandate, Mayor Bob Bertina has publicly disparaged LRT, stating that it is not a priority and indicating that it will only be under consideration if somehow 1 million people move to Hamilton over the next 5 years. Instead, the mayor has said that all-day GO train service is the city's top priority. This, of course, all coming from HamiltonLightRail.com and RaiseTheHammer.org. Editor of that is with us now, Ryan McGreal. Good afternoon, Ryan. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. Really doing really well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for being here. Obviously, you're very much been out in support of LRT. Should this be one or the other? How did we get into either a GO or an LRT? And shouldn't one be complementing the other? And before we even get to that, let me ask you this question. Do you agree that GO trains should come first?
I really don't see it as a one or the other thing. I have no idea how it turned into a competition. Metrolinx certainly isn't under the impression. I've talked to them, and they've been very clear in saying it's not an either-or situation. Both projects are positive, as you say. Both projects are complementary, and we can move forward on both. So I don't understand why we're suddenly being set up as one against the other. They're both valuable. They both improve regional transit, which is what Metrolinx is supposed to be about, and we should be working on moving forward on both of them at the same time.
But you don't have any problem with the fact that GO's going first, just simply because it's there?
Well, I guess I have a problem with the idea that we can't do LRT because we're doing GO instead.
Right.
That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Is this a case, though, where there's been some miscommunication with the mayor and what's happened at City Hall, and this will all come out and it will all be resolved October 13th? We'll have a much clearer picture of where we're going.
It's possible. I mean, I'm certainly looking forward to finding out what the update on the 13th is going to tell us. But certainly the mayor's comments over the past few months have been unprecedented in going against the city's policy, in going very explicitly anti-LRT, even to the point of mocking public people like Mark Chamberlain, and making fun of people who are advocating for LRT. Like, it's just, I would have a lot more confidence to sit back and let the process unfold if the last 3 months hadn't happened the way they have.
I can understand that. Obviously, at the end of the day, Ryan, this is about money. It's always about money. And do you think it's just a case of we can afford to do one first, then the other? We can't afford to look at both of them at the same time?
Again, I don't understand that. I mean, 3 years ago, the province was very clear in saying that LRT in Hamilton was one of its top priorities to fund through Metrolinx. They're funding almost $10 billion worth of projects in the Toronto area, and there's no reason why Hamilton's LRT couldn't be part of that. We were included in Metrolinx for a reason. The city staff reports back from 2008 all said, very clearly there's a sense of urgency. We need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to get into that funding envelope. And the other thing that the staff reports were very clear about saying when the feasibility study was done back in 2008 is that one of the most important considerations for Hamilton's place on that funding list is how strong politically we're supporting and advocating for LRT.
Mm-hmm.
Sending these mixed messages to the province is really hurting us. It's making, according to our own studies that we've been supposed to be following, we're actually hurting our ability to get priority funding for this.
Why do you think McGuinty's flip-flopping on all this? And I know both him and Hudak will, they'll sort of wipe their hands of it and stand back and say, well, it's up to the city to decide what it wants to do. We just write the check. But you know as well as I do, that's a pile of bull. Why do you think he's a little bit colder on this than he was, say, a couple of years ago?
Well, if I had made a promise to spend $800 million on a capital project, and then I found out I didn't have to keep that promise, I'd be pretty happy about it.
I hear you. So do you think as of the 13th, these points will all be brought to the forefront? And again, do you think this is actually a moving away from LRT or just some bad terminology and some misunderstanding?
It's really hard to say. I'm very concerned about the fact that the province is now saying, well, Hamilton has told us, the mayor has told us that the city's priority is all-day GO, so that becomes our priority. That wasn't always the case. I mean, I went back and I know back in, I think it was April or May, the senior management team had their policy for the year, and one of the items on that was all-day GO service. That's great, but nowhere does it say that LRT is no longer a priority.
Right.
So again, there's been this idea that LRT is not a priority anymore. Council has never made that decision. Council has never directed staff or the senior management team to reduce the priority of LRT, and yet we have the city manager sending out an email to council in the summer saying that he has made a decision to suspend non-essential parts of the LRT project, which I can't get a straight answer as to what that means, what was suspended and what was continued. But we've already had the director of the Rapid Transit Office leave the city, which is a huge blow. Gillian Stephen was just excellent. I mean, I only heard the most complimentary things about her from talking to people at Metrolinx. The city was doing an excellent job managing this file and moving it forward. And, you know, when you come back on vacation to find out that your boss has deprioritized your entire operation, that's devastating for morale. You know, and it's these kinds of games that make me very, very nervous.
Why, and I can see that, why do you think the city manager and the mayor said what they said? And again, we're going back over what we've already talked about, but do you think this was just a misunderstanding of terms? And what reason would the mayor have for moving away from this?
Scott, I honestly have no idea. I've been scratching my head over it for the past 3 months. I'd love to be able to get an answer that explains what's been going on, because it just seems like it doesn't make any sense. I don't see any tactical, strategic value in it. It just seems really arbitrary and very self-destructive for the city.
Ryan McGreal is with us, editor of raisethehammer.org and hamiltonlightrail.com. Hang on a sec, Ryan. Can you join us for one more segment? We'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages of LRT.
Sure, I'd love to.
Hamilton Light Rail is an independent group of citizens who believe that Hamilton needs an ambitious approach to economic development and urban revitalization based around high-quality rapid transit. Ryan McGreal is with us, editor of raisethehammer.org and hamiltonlightrail.com. Ryan, talk to us about advantages and disadvantages of light rail. I guess the disadvantage number one off the top would be expense. But what are the advantages that you see in a light rail system in downtown Hamilton? Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, in terms of the expense, the capital cost to build LRT is significantly higher than if you were to go with a roughly equivalent bus rapid transit system. But once you've built it, the operating cost per passenger is much lower, mainly because it tends to draw a lot more passengers and it can carry a lot more passengers. But the biggest advantage is that it becomes an anchor that attracts lots and lots of new private investment. Developers love to build around LRT because it's a commitment from the city that this is a long-term investment. You know, it's not, I mean, a bus route, you can change it, you can cancel it, but when you lay tracks in the ground and you buy rolling stock, you're saying that you're in it for the long haul. It's a 50-year, 100-year investment in vitality, and developers really go for that. We've seen that in city after city across North America and across Europe and around the world.
You've heard lots of Hamiltonians, Ryan, that said, we don't need this, it costs too much money, a bus is fine. What do you say to them?
Well, I mean, I certainly hope I can convince people to change their minds about that. You know, again, it's not simply a matter of moving people around. It's also a matter of generating economic activity. I mean, if we can get hundreds of millions of dollars in new investment, that's new tax assessments. It's new people moving into the lower city along the transit route. It means we're getting more efficient use of our public infrastructure, which is already built and paid for. You know, it means we have more people downtown living, working, spending money. It's really good for the economy. And in fact, the city studies and the provincial study both found that LRT produces a large net benefit once you actually take into account the economic development that occurs.
There's so many out there that says, you know what, we're tired of this if we build it, they will come attitude, and then nothing happens. And I know that the naysayers out there, I ain't one of them, but I just wondered what your thoughts are on those people.
All I can say is, I mean, it's good to have a healthy skepticism. Look at other cities that have built LRT. Look at how they built it. Look at how they did economic planning around it, and you can see, you know, that when you build it the right way, developers are attracted to that. I mean, nobody questions the fact that if you build a highway, developers are going to build subdivisions around it.
Yeah.
We know that it works. LRT is the same. It's a different form of development and it's a different land use, but it's one that's actually much more efficient and more productive and is more profitable for the city.
Can you give Hamiltonians an example of other Canadian cities where it's worked? Obviously, it's been in Calgary. I lived in Calgary for 3 years, was there during the Olympics. It was already up and running at that time. Give us an idea, some sense of security, the other Canadian cities that have made this work.
Sure. Well, I mean, Calgary has done it. Edmonton has done it. Edmonton's a pretty small city. and they've got a very successful LRT system. Their operating costs are low, their ridership is really high. Vancouver, interestingly enough, in the late 70s and early 80s, the Ontario government wanted to build not LRT like we're using it now, but they wanted to build an elevated LRT system, so it would run in the sky. Hamilton turned it down, so they built it in Vancouver instead. It's the SkyTrain, and it's enormously successful.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It's driven a lot of really, really intense and very high-quality new development. I mean, Vancouver is routinely recognized as one of the most livable cities in the world.
Why don't you think Toronto's jumped on it?
Well, I think they did jump on it, and then there was an election, and I think for in Toronto, remember also that they are still going ahead with a number of LRT developments in Toronto and in Mississauga and Scarborough and kind of immediately around it. The politics there are interesting. I think a lot of people in Toronto decided that cutting costs and getting spending in line was more important than investing, although now Torontonians are starting to wake up to the fact that it's actually not possible after all to cut spending without cutting services. So it's a challenging situation for Toronto to figure out what's the right way to move forward. But I do know that at least some of their LRT plans are still going ahead.
What is the obvious advantage over LRT as opposed to something like streetcar? Lots of people will say you put rails in the ground, you're going backwards, you're not going frontwards, where it's obviously, mass transit is the way of the future. What do you say to that when people are comparing these to streetcars?
Well, this isn't old-fashioned streetcars. If you think of the old TTC streetcars, they're slow, they're cumbersome, they're heavy, they ride in mixed traffic. You have to step up into them. Modern LRT trams are, they're a different beast altogether. They've got low floors. You can step straight onto them off the sidewalk. In the Hamilton plan, they actually run on dedicated lanes, so they're not going to get stuck behind traffic. And as the tram approaches an intersection, the light turns green for it. So it's got signaled priority. It's what's the difference between a Honda Civic and a Model T? They're basically the same technology, but it has developed a lot in the past 50, 60 years.
What do you want Hamiltonians to know about LRT? What if you could get their attention for 5 or 10 minutes and try to sell them on this? What are they missing?
I guess what they're missing is that this is an opportunity that we have to transform the way our city grows in the next 20 or 30 or 50 years. It's not just about a faster way to get from Westdale to downtown. It's about, changing the way investments flow in the city. It's about taking the city that we already have built and making it more valuable, more productive. There's one thing that I hate to see is, as a taxpayer, and a resident of the city, watching money get spent to try and prop up areas that are not economically doing very well. I would rather see downtown thriving and generating surplus value. That holds the line on property tax increases, and it also holds the line on intensification of more suburban areas.
What do you think is going to be? What do you think is going to be the outcome here? What do you think is going to happen? What's your educated guess on to what will we be doing in the next 5 years? How will we be addressing this issue?
Well, I think right now the most important thing is that the City Council and Metrolinx and the Ontario government, they need to hear a strong, clear message from Hamiltonians that we believe in LRT and that we are committed to it and that we want to see it go ahead. I think that's the first thing. Is in the short term, our politicians. The city is saying, well, we can't commit because the province hasn't told us they're going to pay for it, and the province is saying, well, we can't commit because the city's not telling us that it's a big priority for them. These games have to stop, And I think the first thing is they need to recognize that there is a groundswell of support for LRT. There is a clamor, if you will. From that point, then it becomes a matter of, realistically, how fast can we get the money committed through Metrolinx, and how fast can we get the shovels in the ground? The original plan in 2008, the idea was that we could start building as early as this year, and we would have it finished before the Pan Am Games. Whether that's still possible is difficult to say, but I'd feel a lot more comfortable if I know that the money is committed.
Obviously, if Hamiltonians wanted this to happen, they could make it happen, I hope. What do you think their greatest concern is? And I'm guessing, obviously, it's hidden cost.
Sure. Well, the good thing about LRT is that there's a lot of LRT developments around the world. The costing is pretty straightforward now. As far as I understand, Hamilton is already about 30 or 40% done on the detailed design work. We're at the point of saying this is where the stations go, this is the right of way on the tracks, this is what we're going to do with this curb cut. It's actually at a very, very detailed level of planning right now. So we can say with a high level of accuracy how much this is going to cost. And the great thing about right now is with the global economy, I guess we're not really in a recession right now, but it's kind of sluggish.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity for cities and for governments to build large capital projects. As we saw with the Pan Am Stadium, there's a lot of international contractors who are actually quite competitively bidding. The stadium is being reconstructed for a lot less than we were expecting to spend. So there's no reason why, if we jump on this right now, we can't realize some of those same economies for building our LRT system.
That is a very valid point. If you're going to do it, now is the time to do it, that's for sure. Do you think we will have all the answers to these questions and what that cost will be by October 13th?
I think we'll have enough of a detailed picture to decide if it's worth moving forward.
All right. You can find out more, HamiltonLightRail.com, HamiltonLightRail.com, or, of course, go to raisethehammer.org. Ryan McGreal, editor of raisethehammer.org, has been with us. Ryan, thanks very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.